Good evening, Tanmeet. Welcome to Reflections.
Hi, Carolyn. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm not as excited as I am, and hello and good evening to all of you. And welcome to Joy, your most potent medicine. I have to say, and I'll say it again, we are in so much need of this class. I mean, I won't go into all of the horror that's happening around us, but it's happening. It's just a challenge to find goodness now and to
Yeah,
live there. So, really, the gift you bring people. So, take it away, and I'll see you at the end of class.
that sounds perfect. Oh, I think Carolyn's right. I think it just gets more and more timely, fortunately or unfortunately, for this work. And so I'm so thrilled to be here and so honored that you would take time to be with us and to be with me here tonight. I want to just start with centering us here, actually, just giving us a chance to come into this space together. So, just a few moments of a minute or two of centering ourselves and getting here. If you're open to closing your eyes, you can do that. I'm going to do that. But you can even bring your eyes to a downward gaze or just any way that you can come more inward and kind of release the external distractions that are around you right now. So I'm going to close my eyes. But if we just bring our attention to our breath, you don't have to change it or do anything about it, modify it, or judge it. We're just noticing it. So just noticing the breath as it comes in and out. And maybe you can just see where it's easiest for you to wrap yourself around your breath. Maybe it's where the breath comes in, whether that's in your nostrils or your mouth, however you're breathing, as it goes down the back of your throat. Maybe as it comes back out your mouth or your nose. Just find where it's easiest for you to hold attention there and just allow yourself to come to your breath as an anchor. The breath is literally a life force, but also mystically, energetically, it's also our life force, our spirit, our prana, our chi, whatever name you use for it. And if you're like me, you've had a full day already and your mind's been going in a million different directions, my body too. And so just coming here feels like a gift to pay attention for a moment or two. And just even when we think about coming to a space for joy or discussing joy, the breath allows us to make space, literally, to breathe in and out and create some space to receive whatever we'll discuss tonight, whatever you receive that moves most strongly within you. Just breathing in and out. Let's do one more. All right. Okay. So something clicked on my screen. I need to get rid of it. All right. When I open my eyes after I do that, everything looks different around me. I don't know if you feel that, but all right. We're here together to talk about joy and as a potent medicine. And tonight, the first of the four modules that we're discussing is really about this question: why even bother? I think that's really poignant right now, as Carolyn said, when we look at the world. I mean, it's felt like every day there's poignancy around that, and some weeks even more than others. I feel like this is one of them. And so, really, this question of why bother with joy and what is the point of it, right? So, I want to start with why joy is my most potent medicine and why I hope you'll think of it as one of yours. So, I when I was 9 months pregnant with my third child, I received a deadly diagnosis for my second. He was barely 3 years old at the time. His name is Zubin, by the way. And it was a moment of reckoning for me as a mother, as a physician, as an activist. I had fought already for more than 15 years in my career for justice and health equity against racism and inequities in the healthcare system and on the streets and in the exam room. And, I'm a fighter. So when something's wrong in the world, I fight back. And that feels really natural to me. And in this moment, in this real reckoning of a before and an after, I was told that my second child would not live, that he would not only not live, that it's 100% fatal, but also that the disease, by the way, is called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and it's like an ALS in young boys. That also not only would it be fatal, but he would have a degenerative neuromuscular condition that would first take his ability to walk and then to use his arms, and then his lungs and heart slowly would fail. And it was a moment where, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I could fight back. I didn't feel like I could find justice. I felt like there wasn't anything to fight for. In fact, the physician who gave us the diagnosis said, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. And so it was a moment of wondering, how would I get through this? How would I not only just get through, but how would I thrive? And how would I possibly find happiness or joy or whatever the words were at the time for me? How would I make this life worth living? And it wasn't until I learned how to fight for myself, how to fight for my joy, my family's joy, that I understood that the deepest justice, the deepest liberation I could find was actually joy in my body. And it really became a culmination of my personal and professional work. I had already been working in complex mental health and trauma around the world, and it became a culmination, a merging and mingling of my work to understand what is the human capacity for joy and how to find it. And in that process, I learned that we all have joy, no matter what. It's finding it, recognizing it, identifying it, and holding it that is our work to do. And that joy became and is my justice work now, because I thought they were separate. I thought that I had to feel bad or guilty for the frivolous nature of joy, that if I was going to fight against suffering in the world, that then I must suffer myself. And my own cultural stories of mothers showing their love through their grieving and their struggle. In my culture and my family and cultural stories that were both explicitly and implicitly given to me, you showed it through sorrow, your love. And so it became this understanding in this journey for me. And once I started mingling it with the neuroscience and understanding that there was real justice in this act of seeking joy, that actually it wasn't about looking for healing to get to joy, but it was looking for joy to heal. It wasn't about finding my power through finding joy. It was about finding joy to claim my power. These are subtle but really big differences. They're not so subtle to me anymore, but at the time they seemed like semantics, just words. And now what I understand is they are real differences in justice and liberation in our own bodies. And to really come into this joy practice, we must step lightly into our bodies. And so really over the next 4 classes, we're going to be talking about that. And today, what we're going to work on is this question of why it matters and why even bother. Okay, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a foundation in why joy is so important to me, not only for myself, but for the work I do with others. So You know, I think what the way Carolyn started this class today by saying, that this is really something timely, important work we need to do. I think that really is the core of today, is to understand that one of the questions I get asked the most after I give a talk, after I teach a class, or after I'm with patients or writing after someone reads my book, I get asked, isn't it just false positivity or contrived? Isn't it contrived to find joy in a moment like this when the world is falling apart, when the angst is so high, when the pain and the heartache are so real? And here's what I would say. Well, what I do say, but what I would say to you today is that one is this is just an invitation. It's an invitation to a different way to hold life. It's an invitation to say that there is an and, if you will, an and affirmation here. That yes, the world is angst filled. Yes, your heart may be breaking. Mine definitely is. Yes, you may be like me, laying in bed with existential questions of what the hell are we going to do? And yet, it's not only that joy is okay to find, but I would argue, and what I'm going to show you tonight is that it's critical. Joy is a revolutionary act in our body and in the world. It is revolutionary and critical to have joy so that we can live in a troubled world, so that those of us who have the energy to try to make change can do that, so that we can all support each other and hold each other through the hard, so that we can understand life was never meant to be one or the other, that it always and probably always has and always will be a holding of both the beautiful and the brutal. So, joy is very different than happiness. And that's what I want to really explain to you first. Okay. Happiness is a cognitive construct. I would say the world is not happy right now. There is nothing I can tell you about war or violence or loss of life or bloodshed that is happy. I would never try to dismiss that or make it okay or find the reason or dismiss anything that has to do with the loss of so much. It isn't happy because happiness is a cognitive construct. It is how we evaluate the world. It is how we evaluate our life. It is how we evaluate what is happening. And yet, joy, I do want to say happiness is welcome anytime. Gosh, I would like some happiness this week, right? I'll take happiness any day. So it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's if your marriage is going well. It's if your job is satisfactory. It's if your child got the teacher they wanted this year for school. These things they're important and they're beautiful. But it's different than joy. Joy comes from the same deep well as our pain. That may be the hopeful narrative tonight because we have a lot of pain, which means we have the potential for joy. Joy comes from the same deep well as our capacity for love, meaning, connection. Those things are why we feel so much pain because we have lost connection to the world, because we have lost so much, because we love so deeply is why we have so much pain. And joy comes from that same deep well. Okay. This is important because, as much as it is our human experience to have pain, as much as that is true for all of us, I cannot change that or take that away. It actually is also our birthright and our human right to have joy. It comes from the same place. It always has been there. We are born with it. No one can give it to us and no one can take it away. Now, this, in my opinion, is a more hopeful narrative than only relying on happiness. And in my estimation, as a physician who's managed complex mental health for 25 years in a very complex population, what I would say is that, in fact, when we confuse joy and happiness, we do ourselves and others a disservice. Because what happens is we feel, the individual, that we are even more broken if we cannot be happy. If we cannot hack our way to happiness this week or any week, if we cannot feel good about our life or the world, then something must be wrong with us because others have figured it out. If this is our only narrative, we only get deeper and deeper in an abyss. And actually, the more truthful and hopeful narrative is that joy is available to us always. And that is what we will be exploring. But these foundational understandings are actually the inciting of that revolution in your body and inciting of a different way of coming into your life. So I want to make sure that's landing. And I always take a breath after I explain all that because it's a lot, but it's hopeful, I think. And it's also more true. So we'll start there. It's really a revolution to opening up to life being good and hard, okay? The thing that suffering does, the reason it's such a revolution, I just have a couple of slides that I'm gonna put up. If Vince, you could put up the slides. We're gonna go on and off the slides so that I can have more, face-to-face time with you too when I'm not doing the slides. I wanna be able to not that I can see you, but I'm feeling you, and I want you to see me and feel me. So, what I want you to understand in that realm of joy and happiness, the difference between the two and why it matters, is to understand that the reason joy is critical, the worse the world or our lives get, is because, not because we should feel joy or we have to be joyful or we need to have joy to be getting through. That's not why. Because it's a revolution in our body to open up to all of life. So, what happens in any time of suffering, our personal or world suffering, or any kind of suffering, trauma, or oppression, is that we get a narrow lens. We feel there's no way out. We feel the weight and oppression of that tunneling of the suffering. If you've ever felt that, I know that you can resonate with that feeling of what that's like. Suffering narrows our lens, and it's hard to see a way out. But what I would offer as an invitation is something I say in my book, which is looking for joy expands your world. So it expands that lens. And when it does, you can see more. More reason to keep seeking until you live your way into a world that feels worth fighting for. I'm going to say that one more time. Until you live your way into a world that feels worth fighting for. I want you to feel that. What I'm saying is that when the world feels hopeless or powerless, when our lives, our personal lives feel that way, it's not just the world, right? We could be personally going through something even while the world feels a little better. We're in that narrow lens. And it feels like I did in that moment when I received that diagnosis, actually. It can feel like there's nothing to fight for. I sure felt that. But joy expands that lens so that we feel that there's a world worth fighting for. And what I can tell you is that the more you can open to your pain and the pain of the world, the more you can open to the joy and the worth fighting for. I can't guarantee much as a physician 100% to anyone about anything, but this I will guarantee is that if you numb to all the pain of your life or to the world, whatever it is you're managing right now, you will shut down and numb to the joy. We cannot not pain and then expect to only stay open to the good. It doesn't work like that. When we shut down to all of it. And so the opening up to joy, the expanding of this lens is critical to reclaim our humanity and reclaim a world worth fighting for. So I hope that's resonating for some of you. And if not, I hope actually, if it's not resonating, even if it's causing some angst or some questioning, that's also important. Because what that means is you're touching in a place that needs touching on, whether it's angst or, oh, epiphany. It doesn't matter. What it means is that you're moving something within you. And I would trust that as that you're moving some truth for yourself. And so I hope that is happening for some of you. The way that joy really works is that actually I'm gonna move these slides down for a second so that I can talk to you a little bit, and then we'll there we go. I love how I feel like I'm closer to you, even though I can't see you, but I'm telling you, it makes me feel closer. So joy, people think of it as just a way to feel good or feel better or have some joy. And what I'm going to explain to you tonight is a segue to, we'll go deeper into it in the next module, is how joy reclaims safety in your body. Okay. Because when you're in that narrow lens, when you're in a non expanded view of your life or the world, it's because your body has told you, your nervous system, your threat centers in your brain have told you it's not safe here. We're going to narrow in, we're going to come in. And that's for good reason. Your body, your brain are just protecting you. But it doesn't serve us when it sticks around in that way for a long time. And so when we have pain, whether it's emotional, physical, or any sort, existential angst, when we have pain, we feel unsafe and we want to run away. Now, I'll tell you, in any moment of pain that I have, my first primal instinct is to run away. It's actually all of our primal instinct. It comes from running away from tigers or bears, and it serves us well. But in cases of emotional pain, of angst, of suffering, it doesn't serve us long term. Even if it serves us in the short term, we may dissociate or numb out to withstand some suffering. I think that's our body and brain just helping us through. And it's only when these patterns get stuck or rigid for a long time that we really get stuck in a non expansive state. So it's how we've survived. It's how we've lived this world. It's how we've run away from things and made it through. But in the case of the modern world of emotional pain, of suffering, of oppression, of systems that break us down, it doesn't serve us to run away for forever. And so joy becomes a way to almost reset our nervous system, a way to re regulate and reclaim safety. It becomes a way, and we'll look at this with the science, of actually telling our body and our brain, you're okay right now. It's okay. And it may not be the truth of the world or your life, but in this moment, you may be okay, but paralyzed in a state of fear and sadness. And so telling yourself that through an experience of joy, through practicing joy, can be a way to re regulate our threat centers and our hypervigilant nervous system. So that's how joy becomes a path to power, to safety, to ease. And so that is a very different. I'm learning a very different way for people to see joy, to understand joy, and I think it's because we have language around joy that is too muddled with happiness, but also that makes it more of an object instead of an experience. That when will I get to joy? When will I have joy? Instead of when do I practice joy? When do I reclaim joy as an experience in my body to reclaim that safety? So we've been told also that joy comes to those who are most resilient, the ones who are able to rewire their brains or get through things or have the right mindset. And, what I would say is that you can't think or rewire your way out of poverty or many types of suffering. That's a privilege to be able to do that. It's not, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just calling it out as saying that we can't just make our way to joy by thinking ourselves there. We need to get into our body and experience it. So, let's talk about, Vince, could you put the slides back up? Let's talk about the ways to kind of think about joy. I was asked recently at a book event, and by many, I've asked, "What is joy?" And I'll tell you, I racked my brain about that for a long time because I was writing a book about joy, so I thought I had to define it for, gosh sake, I probably should define it. And what I came to actually was that I can't define joy for you. That if I define joy, I'm only using the same systems that broke it down for us to feel like we couldn't have it, that we couldn't experience it. And so, really, you need to know your own joy. And you know it when it moves in you. You know it when you feel expansive and light, whatever that is for you. And so you can really work to define your own joy. And then I would say to swim in it a little bit. When you see it, when you feel it, swim in it. And I'll give you an example so that this is more practical. I actually, my joy, I mean, it's many things, but some of my deepest joys have to do with music and dance. When I'm moving to the rhythms that move me and my body and that make me feel at home and belonging, I feel a joy in my body that is so light, so expansive, that I feel like I'm in one of the deepest states of bliss I could be in. So I know that for myself. I know that if I need to move something through myself, I know I can turn on usually Bollywood, Bhangra music, so from my culture, and I can just get to a state of bliss that will allow me to either feel more expansive or, quite frankly, cry a lot if I'm holding a lot of grief. I know that that experience will move me and move things through me and lighten me. So you know what those things are for you. But the question is whether you know to swim in them when you feel them. Now, I think I took for granted most of my joy um, before, frankly, I understood how important and how precious it would be for me. So I don't do that anymore. I swim in it. One example is that I actually, last year I had a 50th birthday party. Thank you for everyone saying happy birthday. I'm just imagining it. And I had a big Bhangra Bollywood dance party. And I spent hours, the entire party, on the dance floor, and almost 100% of it with my 3 children dancing. They were there the entire time, including my son in a wheelchair, who dances, like, better than anyone. And thank you, Vince. I realized I wasn't going to that slide yet. Um, and actually, let me move it for a second because 'cause I'm telling this story now, and so let me just remove this. I'm sorry about that. Um And I felt so much joy in that moment. I was tearful. It was that joyful for me to be on a dance floor, moving to these rhythms with 3 beings who I helped bring into this world, with one who is slowly leaving it. I felt so much joy. And I remember closing my eyes and actually saying to myself in my mind, remember this, Tanmeet. Remember this and remember it and bottle it for all the brutal moments. Hold this as healing medicine. So, yes, joy is elusive. It comes and it goes. So does pain, actually. Both are elusive. But we often hold on to the pain longer than the joy. It's part of our primal instinct. It's part of our survival mechanism. And what I would say is it's necessary to intentionally try to swim in and hold on to the joy. Make it count. Make it matter. Remember it. Write about it. Think about it. Meditate on it. Pray with it. Whatever your way of moving through the world is, breathe with it. Reflect on it. Whatever it is for you, have those moments and hold them, because actually there's neurochemical cascades that happen when we do. And when we talk about the science, we'll be talking about those cascades as well. There's actual science of why that matters in your body. So, one way that I actually have my touchstones for joy are using kind of my own ground rules, you could call them, for joy, my touchstones, my mantras, if you will. And I ask you today, as part of this class in this first module, to not only recognize why joy is important, to not only say, when I recognize it, I'm going to try to even float in it a little bit, even if swimming in it is hard, but also to think about and maybe cultivate what your ground rules, what your touchstones, your mantras might be. In the book, I talk about this, but I want you to make your own. And that might be part of a task that you could think about doing after tonight. And I'm going to share with you mine. And they change over time. I change them. I look at them again and I keep them with me and think about it. Um, I'm going to show you what mine are right now and just give you a sense of what I mean, because these things help me to hold on to when things are hard. So, Vince, maybe put that back and we'll try again. Thank you. So these are my touchstones. Like I said, you find yours. You find the ones that resonate for you. You'll know, because when you find them, when you say them or write them or think about them, you'll feel that lightness and expansiveness in your body. So remember, mine do not have to be yours. But one of mine is I deserve and choose joy. This one is big for me because I thought, this is my truth, but before my son was diagnosed, I thought that joy was something that came to you, that it was something that you got when things were going right. And I now understand that instead, joy is an intentional practice for me. It's something to choose every day. And I deserve it. Not because I deserve it because I want to be a better mother or a better wife or a better physician or a better anything, teacher. All those are good. But I deserve joy because I'm a sacred human being, and we all deserve to feel the expansiveness and lightness of joy, to feel the full continuum of our humanity. And so for me, a major touchstone is deserving and choosing joy, of saying, this is mine, it is my right to have, and I deserve to have it. Now, someone asked me if I have joy every day. And actually, the answer is yes. Now, people think that means that I'm so happy and blissful every day. That's not true. What's true is that I touch joy every day. Some days I touch joy all day. Some days I touch it just once for a flicker, but I touch it every day because I choose to. And that's how a touchstone can help you. It's a reminder, a way to come back to your center and remind you of why this practice matters, why even bother, right? Um, this just reminding me. So, I often teach intuitively and don't always plan which story I'm going to use, but I have to tell you, it's coming to me, so I'm going to share it with you. Is that last week I had a really hard day. I had a 9-hour day at Children's Hospital with my son and my husband, and it's a biannual thing that happens, and it's brutal. It's really brutal. It's doctors after doctors, and for hours and hours, therapists, doctors, clinicians, labs, tests, X-rays, a kind of super day. They call it super clinic. It's convenient, so I guess it's super convenient, but every specialist, every doctor coming in to check how things are going biannually and to order more tests, to give new medications and new outcomes, and discussions. This one was especially brutal. I don't know, they're all brutal, but this one was pretty heavy. And, I didn't have much happiness in that day. I really didn't. It was quite heavy. But I had joy. I touched joy, but I made sure I touched joy. One way that I did that was through radical gratitude in the day for these light workers and helpers who were here for my son and us, even though they were giving me news I didn't want and discussions I wanted to leave. The fact that they were there of service to us felt like a moment of radical gratitude. Also, I came home from that visit and I took a long walk. Luckily, I was able to leave my son with my husband and I took a long walk. And I listened to music very loud. I told you music's very important to me. It wasn't Bollywood this time, but other music. And I walked and sang and cried so loudly. And I moved things through me. And what I'm going to tell you is that even a moment like that feels joyful to me now. And I'm going to tell you why, because it connects back to why joy is critical and why it matters to me and hopefully will to you. If I can cry that hard, if I can feel all of that pain so deeply, I have not lost my humanity. This suffering has not stripped me of all of that yet. Now, that feels like a moment of joy to reclaim that power in my body. If you're in a state where you feel like you've lost that continuum of humanity, then I would invite you to think of ways to step back into your body over these 4 classes that we're going to talk about and just step back into that feeling and leaning in again. But I will tell you that a joy practice doesn't always look like bliss. And at the same time, I feel like my life is pretty blissful. So that's why that touchstone is so important to me. The next one is that joy is real and always waiting for me. Now, that is important to me because it felt like joy was not available to me anymore. That if you had a tragedy that decimated your motherhood experience, that then it must be done, that there was none left to have, and that joy was for those people who have better lives. And what I would say is that I do not have moral failure because I suffer. I'm not bad, so something bad happened to me. I know you can intellectually understand that and agree with me on that. But if we can agree on that, then why would joy not be waiting for me as well? So the fact that joy is real, it is not some fairy-like magic dust. It is not something only other people get to have. It's something that's always waiting for me when I can expand into it. That is very important as a touchstone for me. So I hope that you're getting a sense of why these touchstones can be so important. And maybe you're even thinking of what yours might be or what one feels resonant that is a gateway to yours. And the third one is that joy and happiness are not the same thing. Now, this is something we talked about at the beginning of tonight at this module, is that joy and happiness aren't the same, right? And I explained why I think that and why I'm hoping that we can change the mental health conversation around that. It's important to me that that be a touchstone for myself because the world and this life often don't feel happy. You can actually take that down, Vince, for a little bit, and then we're gonna talk about. Um, they don't feel happy a lot of the time, and so I have to remind myself when I'm not happy that it's okay. Joy is different than this. Joy is still real and waiting for me. Joy is not the same as this not feeling happiness, wondering when it could be happy again. I still can access joy. I deserve it. I choose it. It's real. It's waiting for me. So you can see how my touchstones help me recenter, come back to a place that feels like I deserve and can choose to practice joy again. And so that's how touchstones can help you. They're like your ground rules. They're like the way of feeling into a life that feels worth fighting for, a way of recentering around joy as a practice, as a way of being, as a way of moving, really. And so, if we were all together in person right now or in a group, in a circle, what I would ask you to do is to take a few minutes and think about, what could my touchstones be? What could my ground rules be that would help me reflect and remember to come back to joy? It's a powerful exercise to do that. And it's a powerful exercise because even in the act of doing it, even in the act of figuring out what your ground rules are, which, honestly, I hadn't done formally till I wrote this book because I did it for myself so that I could do it for readers. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, was coming back to these ground rules over and over. But even just formalizing that in my mind in this practice brought me into it in a different way. It integrated it into my body in a different way. And so, now when I tell you my ground rules and tell you my touchstones, it's it's so integrated in the fabric of my body that it's second nature to me now to, on a hard day, in a challenging time, to sit, to take a pause. And it's as if they just float to me right away now after years of intentionally touching them and over and reminding myself. And so I invite you now to reflect on that, to take a few moments to really think, what's just one ground rule that I can have around joy? I wish I could hear them, honestly. I hope you share them in after the class with each other, with your loved ones, or with us in the community. But what could one be? And what I would say to you is that if it feels difficult to find it, this is a technique that I've used with others and patients and with myself when I've been struggling, is that I would come to, if I can't find a ground rule about joy, a touchstone, a way to remember, a reflection, can I instead write down or reflect on what my limiting factor is in joy? What is it that is keeping me from joy? Because through that, you will find what you need to work on to reverse to get to a touchstone. So let me give an example. I had a patient once who we worked on this, and they said, well, I don't have any touchstones. I can't find any. I just don't have any ground rules around it. And so then we got into a little discussion and reflection on early life and experiences. And their experience was that, if you had too much joy in this person's family culture, that then it was arrogant. It was almost gloating. And that was the implicit and sometimes explicit messages they got from family, that you need to keep that to yourself, or having that is really being selfish and arrogant. It's not an uncommon belief or experience. And when we uncovered that for them, what we really uncovered was that this belief, this thought, this pattern, this way of experiencing life was a limit to actually experiencing the expansiveness of joy, you can imagine, right? And so we worked together to find an authentic touchstone for them, which eventually ended up being that my joy has value. And I think that's a powerful touchstone, right? I mean, to claim joy as being worthy, as being valuable, that's pretty powerful inner work right there. And so, when you think about this question of why even bother with joy, If you're not convinced that joy is necessary to be distinguished from happiness, if you're not convinced that joy is a revolution in your body, if you're not convinced that joy was yours to have and is a human right and a way of reclaiming power, ease, or safety in your body, if you're not convinced that joy is a way to expand the lens and hold more and live into a world worth fighting for, then what I would offer is that it's of value to you to find out why it doesn't feel that way. All of it is actually valuable, whether you're resisting or resonating with anything I'm saying. That feeling is valuable. And so when I give this example of this patient I worked with, what I'm really trying to show you is that go with where you are and you'll get somewhere you didn't expect to get to. It's when we resist where we are that it's hard to get somewhere else. So, being with wherever you are and working with making these touchstones is an important exercise. There's two main exercises I really want you to take from tonight. One is this making of your touchstones. If you can sit with that, either maybe it's come to you now or maybe it'll come to you later. And the other one is one we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I really want you to feel the weight of what I'm trying to teach you tonight, which is that this question of why even bother with joy actually, in a way, is dismissing why even bother with this act of being human. I mean, that's pretty big what I just said, right? And I would just venture to challenge us to understand that joy is part of our humanity. And if we're going to take on this act of being human, this act of living this life in its full totality, then we need to feel the pain. We need to feel the angst. We need to feel the heartache of the world or our lives. That's all true. I would never say not to do that. In fact, I think it's crucial. But we also need, and by doing that, this is how we can also open to this. We also need to open to the joy. We need to hold the beautiful, the hopeful, the wondrous, the magical, the mysterious. We need to hold all of it. And by holding it together, we ourselves become more human. That's so big. I'm feeling it in my body when I just said that. But I really feel that strongly about joy and about this work. I mean, that's why I spend enough time writing a whole book about it. But it's not just the book I wrote, it's my work with people in deep crisis. It's the work with myself in deep crisis, not just around my son, but around many things in this world, many points of suffering. It's this work of how do we stay human and whole in a world that is continually breaking down, right? It's a big question. But if we don't bother with that process of that living into that, of finding joy, of practicing joy, if we don't bother with that, then I would argue that we are not bothering with this act of being human fully. Okay. So that's your first task. It's a big one. I don't take it lightly. But I do take it very seriously in terms of the depth and weight it can bring to your life. And then there's actually, Vince, if you just put it up, there's just one more slide to give a touchstone for us for our next part of this class, which is your deeper why. So finding your ground rules is important, but this is also extremely important, is your deeper why. So let's get into that a little bit, because what I'll tell you is that I really mean this. If you don't find your deeper why, that this why even bother with joy, it'll be very hard to answer that question for yourself. Very hard. So part of it is finding touchstones. Part of it is unlayering and untangling your beliefs about joy and what what you deserve or what joy is like in life for you or in your family. I mean, these are all big questions, and I'm not saying you have to be in hours of therapy to answer them. It's just an invitation to reflect on them, although therapy helps. But it's an invitation to reflect on, why does joy feel so inaccessible or hard or elusive? And so this question of your deeper why is really big. Um, so let's dive into this a little bit. Um, I'm just have a reminder here to tell you how this has worked for me in my own life first, and then we'll talk about the science of why this is so important. Okay. So, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of why this is so important to not only to me, but I think to all of us, why we need to do this work of finding our deeper why. Um, so I'm going to talk about first my deeper why of being in medicine, since that's something we all maybe grapple with, not struggle is not the right word, but grapple with in the sense of, why do we do anything we do, right? And so, ostensibly on the surface, you could think that I am a physician who fights for equity and works with marginalized communities because I'm a good person, because I like to help people. And I mean, I think those are true. I think that's true, but they're not enough. They're still pretty surface reasons. They're not enough to withstand the enormity of the job. They're not enough to withstand the brutality of the system, because quite frankly, the healthcare system is brutal on us as healers and providers. It's brutal. It's not enough to withstand the 120-hour weeks that I had in residency and beyond, delivering babies for 20 years. It's not enough to withstand the paperwork and the bureaucracy of insurance world. It's just not enough. There are other ways to help people. So, when I look at what my deeper why is in medicine, I really had to unlayer it. And I'm going to explain to you how to do that too, as well. Don't worry. But I had to unlayer it. And what I really found was that it is linked directly to my sense of not feeling safe in this world. So, I lived a life as a young brown woman in America with turbaned father and turbaned brothers. We're of the Sikh faith, if you know what that is. And we looked very different. Um, in fact, it's much cooler now, sometimes to be Sikh, but then it wasn't cool at all. We were harassed, we were bullied, we were literally given death threats, um, constant racism and discrimination. Spent most of my childhood in the deep South of the United States, and just experienced a lot of hate and misunderstanding and ignorance. And in that experience of not feeling safe, what I realized is that my deep desire to go to medical school, which had nothing to do with any logical sense because I had no doctors in my family, I had never met a doctor. I didn't even know really what they did in medical school. And then I volunteered in a hospital one summer in high school to see what it would be like. And I frankly hated it. It was the sterile formaldehyde scents and that was what candy striper uniforms people were wearing. I just hated it. And I thought, I don't know if I can do this. And yet I kept plodding forward. And the reason is because I thought, this was subconscious, but what I realized is that I thought, if I make this world safe for someone else, then I will feel safer in it. So the more I work for safety for someone, the more I will feel safe in my body and in this country, in this home, in this world. That's a big why, and it's much bigger than I want to help people and be a good person and impact the world. Those are all good. But deeper than that is that safety in this world will make me feel safer too. And as a root of my suffering, feeling unsafe, that feels like a healing for me. So, in a sense, my healing to others will heal me back. right? I think that's subconsciously all healers have that deeper why somehow, but we don't always know it. So that's how a deeper why can keep you keep you at it on days where it just feels like it's too much or it's too hard. Is to remind myself this is to make me feel safer. This is to heal me as well. And then I have more sort of almost stake in it, right? So there's actually, I'll give you another example too, but let me just talk about the science around it because this deeper why is so important. And I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert here. It's not just for joy. Deeper whys are important. In fact, most of the science around it is not, none of it's around joy. The science around deeper why is, around habit formation, around eating differently or exercising or a new behavior pattern, right? Your deeper why actually makes your brain stick to the habit, right? And same thing for joy practice, for choosing a joy practice, for choosing joy as being part of your life. You'll stick to it more if you keep a deeper why. So the reason is that your brain wants the easiest path. It always wants the easiest path. That is brain science in a nutshell. Okay. So it is why we eat things we don't want to eat. It is why we drink things we don't want to drink. It is why we shop when we don't have money. Because the easiest path is to survive, is to comfort ourselves. And it's not easiest to face whatever is happening or be in the pain or sit with the emotions. It's easier to distract ourselves, right? And so your brain always wants that easiest path. And if you think about it like roads, it'll take the road that's the most set, that is the smoothest and easiest to go down, the one that you're used to traveling the most. And it is why in habit formation, we will not take the road that is harder or less traveled, less familiar, maybe more scary, if we don't have a good reason to do that. And so this deeper why, sometimes in the neuroscience, it's termed different things like guiding principle or our deepest intention. I think of it as our highest intention, but you can put whatever name you want to it. Your deeper why, your highest intention, your guiding principle, your touchstone, your um, deeper resolve, whatever it is for you. But that will keep your brain able to move down that path because it will be smoother and easier to travel. That is the best way I can explain it to you. It is crucial. When the brain can see the deeper why, it doesn't have to think constantly about the reason why you're doing something. And especially because those more surface reasons, although somewhat convincing, they're not strong enough to keep us out of the comfort. They're not strong enough to keep us with what we're practicing. So, spoiler alert is that for anything you want to change in your life, you want to find your deeper why. You want your brain to be able to go back to it, to be able to travel down that road and be with it. Okay. So several years ago, I started rowing on the lake here, and rowing like crew rowing. I say that because I didn't understand what rowing was growing up. We didn't have rowing around us, and I didn't. I thought it was something I saw occasionally in the movies that you did at Ivy League schools. I didn't know what it was. But here where I live, there's a lot of water and people row. There's a lot of boathouses. So at one point, I wanted a new fitness activity. I needed to get stronger. I wanted to get more fit and I like to be outside, but I didn't know what to do. And I don't run. I don't like running. And so I had seen people on the lake a lot, and I thought, well, I could try that, right? It's supposed to be good for you. And I started looking into it and then read that it is something that you can do for a long time and it's good for your body. And so I decided to join the boathouse and start rowing. Now, what I didn't know is that to row, you have to get up at 4 in the morning, 3 times a week in the dark when the summer light is gone, and get to the boathouse in the dark and start rowing in the dark until the sun rises, and then it's up by the time you come back to the boathouse, because I had to row early so that I could row before work. So It's hard to get up at 4 in the morning, and it's not something I loved doing, and I'm not what you would call a morning person, so I decided to go for it. I had read things, and it looked like it would be a good thing for me to do. But I found it was hard to get up, like getting fit and getting healthy seemed like good reasons, but it was hard. And so I realized I had not sunk into my deeper why. I had not figured out why I was doing this. And so I did this exercise that we're going to do together in a second. And I found when I went layers down, it actually was not really all about getting fit and getting healthy. It was about getting stronger to lift and transfer my son who was getting weaker. It was about getting fitter because I'm getting older and I was scared that I wouldn't be able to do the caregiving activities that were becoming more and more necessary of me. Now, that is a much bigger, a much deeper, as you would say, why. And so I took that unlayering, I took that deeper why, and I really integrated it and really integrated in the way of, really said it to myself, wrote it down, really tried to bring it into the fabric of my being, of my body. And it worked. The alarm would go off at 4 o'clock. I mean, I'm only human. So the first time it'd go off, I would snooze it and I would think, "Ugh, I don't want to get up." And then my brain had a smoother road to go down for a deeper why instead of, just go back to sleep. There's other ways to get healthy. You can take a walk later. The things that happen when you're battling that kind of moment. Instead, I started easily going down a smoother path, which was the alarm would go off. I would snooze it, and then I would lay there and think, "It's so cold and it's so comfortable in this bed. I want to go back to sleep." But instead, I would say, "You need to be stronger. You need to lift Zubin." And then I got up every time. Every time I got up and I got to that boathouse and I rowed that boat poorly, but I rowed that boat and I did my work and it felt so good. It felt good not only because it was good exercise and it was good movement, it felt good because I was fulfilling my deeper why. So, what I want to invite you into today is this path of what is your deeper why? Not only why bother, maybe I convinced you that you should bother. I'm hoping that I convinced you to bother a little bit with joy. But what I want you to do is take it a step further and really come into what your deeper why is about bothering to find joy. And so, the way to do this, the way I found the easiest to do, is that you take whatever it is, the practice that you're trying to integrate into your life. In our case today, it happens to be a practice of joy. It could be for you also at other times changing your food or exercise patterns, or maybe visiting your mom more, or whatever it is for you. It could be many things. But you take that practice and you could write it down or just really take a few breaths and think about it so that you get into the mode of that practice, what that means. And then you literally start numbering. Number one, why do you want to do that? And you write it out. And you write out anything. This is just for you. No one's going to read it. No one's going to, report on it or give you feedback. So you can be as silly or as vulnerable as you need to. You can burn it later, tear it up, but you literally write why you want to do this. And so in our situation here, it might be about finding joy. Like I said, why bother with joy? So it could be, something like, I'm going to just take an example out of thin air. It could be, I want to feel better. Okay, that's a good reason. So all these reasons are good. We're just trying to get to the deeper, deeper reasons, right? And so then you say to yourself, or you write out if you like, but why? Number two. And then why do you want to feel better? And then you go a step deeper. So I'm just giving an example. Maybe that's, I'm tired of feeling so sad. It's draining my energy. But why? Number three, it's hard to feel so heavy every day. But why? Number four, you know, um, I didn't think this out, so I'm just pulling these out, but it could be, um, because I want to be, more present for my grandchildren. That's just an example. It's hard for me to be present, you're thinking, because I'm feeling really heavy and saddened a lot by the world or by my life or by some angst or anxiety. But why do you want to be present for your grandchildren? Number 5, number 6, number 7, and on and on. I would go at least, this is what my clinical experience has been as well. This is not a clinical medical test, this exercise, but it's a test that I've used many times. So I'm giving you my clinical medical opinion that I find you have to go at least 6 or 7 layers deep. Usually 6 to 7 does it, but it might not. You can keep going as deep as you want until you find the reason. You'll know when it's a deeper reason that matters more to you, when you write it, say it, or reflect on it, and you feel, you might feel tears, you might feel chills or goosebumps. These are all bodily signals that you're getting to your truth, right? You might feel a lightness or expansiveness or a kind of feeling. Whatever it is, you get to that deeper why and you know it. And when you look at that 6th or 7th layers compared to the first, you really realize that you've pushed down there. You've really gotten farther. You've really gotten, as people would say, more meat to it, right? I love that term. I'm not sure why I used it, but it really matters. And so if we were together in a circle right now, I would have you all take out a paper and do it. And maybe you're doing it right now. Go ahead if you are. Because what I really want you to do is understand that this deeper why will keep you committed. It will keep you coming back. So when you feel, because I'm telling you, life gets hard again, it gets stressful. Even though my younger brother teases me, calls me the joy lady, he used to call me the gratitude lady after my TED talk, and now he calls me the joy lady. Even though he calls me that and people think I'm that, which I am. I'm joyful every day, I told you. There are still days where I ask myself what the point is because it feels like I've worked so hard on this. So if I come to a point where it feels like, what's the point if I'm still going to have to ask myself that? Now, the difference is that I come around it much quicker now because I come back to my touchstones and I come back to my deeper why. Right? For me, my deeper why around my joy is a lot of how we started this class today, is because I don't want to just survive this life. I want to live it. I want to live it, truly live it authentically and with grace. That doesn't mean being happy all the time. It just means I'm living all of it. And so my deeper why for joy, it's not just about feeling better. It does make me feel better. It does make it easier to live my life. All of those are true. But the deeper why is really much bigger than that. It's that I have meaning to my suffering. It's that I really feel this life is worth fighting for. It's worth living. It's worth being with. That is my deeper why. So if we bring all of that full circle, what we're really talking about tonight is why bother, right? Why bother with joy? So that we can learn about how to practice it. And I hope that you come away with this understanding that the things to sit with tonight, I almost wish I had made a slide of these, but I don't want to get too, sort of academic about it either. I just want you to feel it in your body too. The ways to come at this why bother are to remind ourselves what the difference between joy and happiness are, why that matters, why it's critical and important to feel the full humanity of our experience of this life, of this world, why joy is the way to expand into this life. Instead of distracting or denying or dismissing the sadness, it's a way to expand into a way to hold the sadness, the challenge, the difficulty, right? And it's a way to reclaim safety in our body that was taken from us from whatever the original suffering, angst, trauma, or oppression were, or ongoing, whatever those are. It's a way to reclaim that safety for ourselves. So, yes, joy matters. Yes, joy is worth having. This is my bias, but I'm going to stick to it because I think it's critical for us to reclaim power in our body through joy so that we can live this life fully, so that we can make change if that's our passion. Not all of us have to work for change. That's not why we're doing this. By just being more joyful, having a joy practice, we change the world. That's a spoiler alert, but that's for another class. So this sort of sense of how can I, if I want to take on these tasks, these assignments of a sort from tonight, how can I find my touchstones? What are my ground rules? How will I come back to this over and over in a way that it may feel like work, like homework, but what I will tell you is the more you gently flow into the work of practicing joy, the more it will start to work on you. And the more it will be nature instead of work. Okay. So finding your touchstones is important. You can have one, you can have three, you can have five. It really doesn't matter. It's up to you. This is your practice. That's the thing with the revolution. You do it the way you want to do it. So finding your touchstones, your ground rules, what is it that matters about joy and what do I have to remember? That's what you can ask yourself if you want to write it down. What do I need to remember about joy so that I practice it fully with ease, with love, with intention? And the second task, and these are benevolent tasks, by the way. The second task is finding your deeper why. Why should you bother with finding joy? Why does it matter to you? And that's doing that unlayering, at least 6 or 7 layers deep. These are the 2 things I would invite you from tonight to work on, to sit with, to reflect on, to share with us in Carolyn's community if that feels powerful or important to you, to share with someone you love, or to share with no one in your journal or wherever you keep your most sacred thoughts. So this practice of having joy is it's work that will not feel like work. And I never feel like my joy practice is work. I feel like it's a gift. Um, and, I hope that after this class tonight, after this first part, um, I've gotten to the point, I hope you can see it or come to it, that this question of why even bothering with joy, when I get asked that now, when people, and it, happens all the time, when people ask me or people ask me to write about it or speak about it, um, I've gotten to a point where, um, it's so elemental to me that we need joy. It is so elemental to me why we need to practice it, why we need to bother, that I could speak for hours about it, not just in this one module. So I hope that you can feel that resonance somewhere in your body or your heart, either in resistance or in acceptance, and play with it a little bit and search for why you should bother. Because it really doesn't matter that I'm passionate about bothering with joy. It matters that you figure out why you need to bother with joy. And I hope that in that process, you can see that joy is justice. Joy is justice work. Joy is the work of being human. And, I say this all the time to my kids, but I will say it to you. Searching for fairness in this world will decimate your spirit, but seeking joy will soothe your soul. And so I hope that you can see why it matters to bother. And I hope that sits with you tonight in some loving place for you. And I think I would love to have Carolyn come back when she's ready and we could talk some more.
Oh, good Lord, what a good class.
Oh,
Holy smoly. That was I have 10,000 I mean, I'm filled with comments and admiration. So I'm gonna start with one thing I really, would just like a further comment from you about. First of all, I think you're dealing with mystical principles at a high, extraordinary level. I'll get to that in a minute.
mm,
But, why did you use the word justice? Because you could have said, "Joy is my liberation. Joy is my passageway."
mm.
But justice suggests that you're evening the scales, you're balancing the scale. So, why did you choose that word?
I love that question, Carolyn. No one's asked me that.
Mm,
No one has said that. I love that question. So, um, I think that I use justice because in a state of suffering,
mhm,
I think that and I'm going to speak for myself. I will say 25 years of working with patients leads me to some confidence that many people resonate with this. But for me,
mm,
I felt like I had been betrayed by the world,
right.
that it was unfair and I had been, given a punishment of sorts, that this, shouldn't have been this way.
Mhm,
And somehow, some way, in a beautiful way, joy is like a balancer of that scale. Joy reminds me that I am that fully human person and that I'm not betrayed, that I'm still here, that I'm not excluded, I'm not, dismissed.
mm.
So justice feels like a more powerful reclamation than other words that you mentioned, which are true. Gateways, doorways, they're all true,
Yeah,
but they're not powerful like justice.
no, but it also
What do
seems
you think?
well, I don't think you realize how the significance of why you chose it.
I think you're right.
I really because I'm listening to you, and I listen with multiple ears, but and when you were talking about finding your deeper why, you described the first level as that level of the ego reasons why we do things. This is why I do this. This is why I do that. This is why I do that. And you keep going until you get to the soul level. And
Mhm.
these exercises that you are describing and the way you describe this journey is very similar to the mystical path in that the stage by stage unfolding of the mystical path, and I'm thinking of Teresa of Avila or Ignatius Loyola, is a path of challenging the need to have your world operate in a certain way,
Yes.
and then finally getting to a place where you surrender that. So it's like when someone says, "I wonder for what reason was I born? What is the purpose of my life?" And it's not until they get to the place where they can say, "What is the purpose of life? And
Yes.
I will serve that." That they finally start to liberate themselves from the truly burdensome task of thinking that they have to acquire a lot for their safety. They have to have this, they have to have that, and that there are choices that please the gods and keep them safe from the ordinary things of life happening to ordinary mortals. So they name their children things like sunshine, meditation, karma, and they start telling people from the time their children are born, aren't they special? Because if they can surround them with the magic of special dust,
Yeah.
and nothing bad will happen to them. There's all these superstitions people have, and it's all a way of saying, "I'm so frightened on this earth. I don't know what to do to appease the gods. Is it candles? Is it this? Is it that? Is it certain names? Is it the neighborhood I live in?" And I realized years ago when um, I went through this one experience. And I I ended this in 1 hour, and everybody expected me to be very devastated because usually breaking up an engagement is a devastation. But I was ecstatic. Now, I would say for the first time in my life, I knew joy because I couldn't figure out what is this sensation? And my mother said, you should be sour. And I'm like, no, in fact, I'm elated. Tanmeet, I was ecstatic. And I thought, wow, what a feeling. I was actually like floating. I woke up in the morning, the next morning, and I thought, oh my God, I'm still in this happiness bubble. I'm still in this joy place. I wonder how long it's going to last. Do you know what? It's never left me. Now, here, and I've gone through the death of beloved family members and friends and all this, blah, blah, blah. And I have thought about what in the world took place that day. What was it? And it was that day, through that experience, that I finally accepted the wholeness of my life as it was,
Oh,
ceased to make decisions that I thought I should make, or that I just ceased to be anyone but me. That was the moment. That was the instant. That was the instant I said, you know what? I love my life. I'm not compromising it. I became whole in that moment.
yeah.
And that wholeness, the the deeper why. The deeper why did I break? Because it didn't because I thought with this other person, I was compromising my wholeness.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. And which is a decision only each one of us understands deep in ourselves. But from that point on, I truly understood what it felt like to have fragments come together, to be fully present, to as the years go by in my life, not to mind that I'm aging and this and that, and I've got arthritis that I'm dealing with, and this, that, da, da, da. I, I can take anything, but I can't take compromising myself. And
Yeah.
all of it keeps me joyful. And joy is not happiness. I mean, I love that you define that. It is not. It is acceptance of who you are and the life you have, and the agreement with heaven that heaven did not screw up.
Yeah.
That for whatever reasons, the way for the path that you're on is the path that you're on. And by accepting the fullness of the path, the fullness of that path begins to serve you and you it. You
Yeah.
stop fighting it and insisting, well, if I only make this decision, I'll get that path, or I'll get that path, or I'll get this path, or I'll have a child, or da da da. I'll finally have a baby. All those things that you finally realize it's not on my path. What am I doing?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
So
sounds like in that moment you reclaimed your humanity, right? Your full humanity.
I think I claimed it. There's no reclaiming it. If you have it, you don't lose it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I realized my full self.
Yeah.
And it was such a high, and it's never left me. It has never left me, no matter what I have to go through, no matter what I go through with, life and challenges or whatever. That wholeness is a center of joy because you are no longer living in the position that life is unfair. Life
Yes.
is challenging, it's difficult, it's all of these things. But you don't expect life, you're not a child, to be something it can never be, which is fair and
Right.
even.
Right.
And you stop seeking ways
Right.
to make a fish a bird. You stop that, and you simply accept the way it is and do the best you can.
I mean, my children were so annoyed with me growing up because you know how kids are like, "That's not fair. He got a blah blah," and
Yeah,
you know, and they would say that, and then I just look at them and I'd say, "Yeah, life's not fair."
yeah, and that's the truth. And the sooner you learn that, the better. Let's go.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not a harsh thing to say. It's actually a beautiful thing to understand, because what you're saying is what I was, saying about joy, is that I didn't do anything wrong. Nobody is morally
Right.
wrong or failing that they suffer. But inherently in our language, like you're referring to, we think that, it's unfair if this happened to me. Why?
Well, we have a God, and thank God, thank heavens, that our cosmology is crumbling in order to get a more mature understanding of the biospiritual nature of the divine. But we have put together an off planet God system where the God is male and operates like a court system. So that if
Mm,
we're good, we won't get arrested and bad things won't happen to us. And
yeah.
we always think we're good. So let's be real clear here. We always think we're on the right side, and we're always, I think for me, I love bringing into my classes the book of Job.
Mm,
Well, what have I done? I haven't done anything. And the Lord says, where were you when I laid the foundations of this universe and ordered the systems and hung the stars and decided where the moon would be and where were I don't remember asking you. And poor little pissant Job is standing on, and like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And he says, justice is mine. I did this universe. I know what I'm doing. Now back off and don't ask again. And somehow or other, when I read that this one time, the truth of that, like, where do we get off saying, I need you to reorder this whole universe, everybody in it,
yeah.
around my needs? Would you mind doing that?
Yeah.
Suddenly, the whole thing made such that where I realized this universe is incredibly impersonal and yet totally intimate. Totally intimate. Those
Yeah.
are the paradoxical truths about the nature of God. Totally impersonal and deeply intimate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, what you said, it's a mystical journey to realize why to bother with this, right?
Yeah.
Because even the question of why bother implies our sort of sense of it should have been different,
Yes.
right?
Right. Right.
I'm not saying it isn't a natural question. I've asked that before. I definitely asked that. But, now when I get asked it, I sort of have a moment of like, this is such a funny question. Like I see it so different now. I get it, but I see it differently.
And it's a conversation like I wouldn't have this conversation tonight with people in Israel or in Gaza.
Right.
I would not even bring it up. I wouldn't even begin to say because you're sitting in raw blood and you can't bring in a mystical truth.
There is nothing good about that.
Right.
No.
Nothing. You can't do it. You can't go there. You can't go there. And and yet, if we look back in history, because I read history like a heroin addict, um, and you look at wars. At the end of the wars, you look back, whether it's World War II or the Civil War, whatever, you can make sense of sufferings in a way because they're in the book now instead of face to face, where you could discuss, well, this came from this issue and this prejudice and this and that. So you could talk about it once the field is quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you dare not bring it up, but that's when you should bring it up,
Mm.
you know. So what you're dealing with are really profound mystical truths that take an extraordinary courage. And I am just thrilled to be with you. May
Mm.
I ask you to describe the next session
Yes.
before we say
So
good?
yeah. So in the next session, we're really going into the science of joy and pain and looking at how understanding, if we can understand the chemistry and the physio, and don't worry, it's not going to be a boring med school class, but really it's almost like a mystical med school class. But looking at the med school class I wanted that I
Ooh,
didn't.
how you talk.
Yeah. But looking at the chemistry and the physiology of not only what happens in our body when we have pain, when we suffer, but what happens when we claim joy back into that body and how what we're feeling is actually, it's all an intricate, perfect system, right? And so just looking at the energy of that and understanding the real science around is really empowering. I feel it's powerful to understand what those neurochemicals and what our nervous system is doing, because then we can understand how to transform and modulate it. So I'm really hoping people will get a better sense of why this idea of being in our body matters, and why it matters that we heal in our body and not just up here. This is important too. But if we only try to think our way out of our suffering, I would beg to challenge that it's impossible.
Absolutely, absolutely. The brain needs as much, the mind needs as much healing. I mean, you've got to just enlist the aid of the energetic anatomy system, the soul system.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think it'll be really nice to give people that power, that wisdom, that knowledge so that we can understand why it's important. And we're going to link it to how we do embodiment practice, why that matters. So I think it'll be great.
Thank you. I know it will be. I know this was a pleasure. Oh my
Oh,
God, it was just delicious. Thank you so much.
oh,
And
thank you for sharing me with your community. Thank you so much.
believe me, it is my joy.
Mm. And we'll see each other soon.
See you in 2 days. Good night, everybody. Thank you, and we'll see you for class 2 in a few days.
Good night.